Hey everybody, so it's tarpon time. If you had watched my last video, you'll have seen that I saw my first full-size migrating tarpon. And basically what that signifies is my personal kickoff for the tarpon season. I generally don't follow other people's what they do, fishermen lie. So I basically do is I just fish normally, go after whatever I'm chasing, and always have that watch fly, and I'm always looking. So if you watch my prior videos, you'll hear me talking about I'm looking. Well, yesterday I finally actually saw 3 of them, and one massive one. So right there is basically click on, I'm ready to go. I'm not officially ready to go because what I do is I don't take any tarpon stuff until after I've seen my first tarpon. And once I've done that, then I aggressively go after them. And that's what today's video is going to be about, my conversion process of getting all my stuff rigged ready and show you what I use for my tarpon season. Now let's talk rods and reels. I basically have this one conventional system. It's my Shimano TDR Walleye trolling rod. It's an 8.5 foot, medium heavy, 15 to 30 lightweight, line weight. I love this rod. I have a couple of videos about it. It cost me $30 for the rod. I've got it paired up with a Shimano Torium 16, which is also the reel I use for vertical jigging. If I was solely doing tarpon, I probably maybe would go up to a 20 just for more line capacity. But because I'm on the kayak, as soon as I get past that first 10 seconds of the fight, I'm off anchor and I'm following that fish, so line capacity really hasn't been a problem. But that's my conventional rod. Very light action, long, so I could whip out live baits very far, quickly, easily. And that rod tip being so flexible, it absorbs those jumps in that first 10 seconds. So you hear a lot of people bow to the king, bow to the king. With this rod, I don't even need to. I can leave it in the rod holder and that rod will flex so much, it'll give just as much give as somebody else trying to extend their arms out. So love that rod for the tarpon. Next one is my spinning system, and this is a Teramar 7 foot heavy. I've got it paired with a Penn Conflict 6000 spinning reel. This one I use solely for, well, not solely. It's the one I use for casting artificials, which is primarily the big Hobie soft plastics, or I might throw a hard bait every once in a while, but primarily just use it for that. When I do use just artificials, I'll convert this over and I'll just loosen the drags till it's nothing, no drag, and use this to free line baits as well. And third is this guy. This is just a tourist throwaway rod that I found at the boat launch or in the mangroves. Fixed it up, added a Shimano Sahara at 2500, put some trout line on, I think some 6-pound or 4-pound mono line on it, and I use this one to catch all my pinfish and grunts, and that's all I use it for. And that's my 3 rods and reels that I exclusively use for tarpon. And I do fly fish, but primarily just for tarpon. So I've got this rig. I bought this off of eBay for like $135. It's a White River brand. It's basically the Bass Pro Shops home version of it, their private brand. Got it really cheap, $135 for rod, reel, backing, fly line. I make my own 4-part leaders by just connecting different leaders together. I usually use streamers style to mimic like a mullet or a pilchard, or I use worm imitations for the Palolo worm hatch. Like I said, that's primarily the only fly fishing I do. I do occasionally do it offshore, jack fishing for fun, but not a lot. But yeah, I'll do that as well once I've got an established pattern. Well, the Palolo worm hatch, definitely. But as well as if I get an established pattern where I'm finding a feeding school and I'm catching them my other ways fairly easily, then I'll convert over to the fly rod and then just test it out that way. So just for fun. For the terminal tackle and the line, basically I've got on the conventional, I have 65-pound braid because I use that one for vertical jigging on the wrecks and I need a lot of oomph for pulling up those big amberjacks. The spinning one, I've got 50-pound braid on it, and gives me more line capacity, but still has enough strength for the bigger fish, because I also use it for sharks and other big stuff. Leader wise, okay, I buy bulk leader. I don't use fluorocarbon. I use 3 weights, 40, 60, and 80. I just picked up these big spools of Berkley Vanish standard fluorocarbon line because I just had a deal on it. So I picked it up 350 yards, 40 pounds. The reason for the 40 pounds is when I'm catching or fishing in very calm, clear water. It doesn't have to be the fluorocarbon. Tarpon are not that finicky about it. But I need the smaller diameter because I think they do become line shy when the waters around here get really sparkly clear. So when conditions are like that, then I go lighter to the 40 pound. The leader part of it, the main thing is abrasion around the face and the mouth. That tends to wear, because like I said, your average fight time is 30 minutes and it's just constantly rubbing against the cartilage and it'll eventually break. So that's why the heavier duty leader. When you'll see when I fight tarpon, I use as much drag as I would for catching a trout or a yellowtail. Pretty much almost nothing. I just enough drag to keep pressure on them, but not a lot. So it's mainly about, the leader is mainly about abrasion. From there, my probably most used, if I could only choose one, I used 60 pound. This is just some Andy's big volume spool that I got there. And then for nighttime, dirty water, or if I'm definitely wanting to do a tarpon to the boat, captured in hand for photo opportunities, whatever, then I go up to the 80 pound. And it's strictly so I could really horse those fish, really tire them out, get them to the boat, hand wrap it, and I could just force them with that 80 pound, where I have to be a little bit more careful with the others. But like I said, murky water and nighttime, that's the way I go there. Hooks, I use 7/0 circle hooks, period. Nothing fancy. These are just some bulk mustads that I buy. These are the 39944- is that BM or BN? 7/0 Demon Perfect Circle inline black nickel. 50 of them for $13. They're also the ones that are certified by the Billfish Foundation. Just plain circle hooks, nothing special, nothing fancy about it. Again, I don't worry about the 3-time, 4-time big old chunky hooks because I don't put really any drag on these tarpon. I mean, just minimal, hardly any drag on them for that 30-minute fight. Just at the side of the boat when I'm bringing them in, I have to be a little bit more careful because you can straighten these out. But still, if you're parsing them that much, they're too green and you haven't played them out enough. So works really well. The other reason why is that these don't have those really super thick diameter as those 3X, 4X. So when you're using them for crabs or live bait, you're not putting a big old freaking hole in them that really, I mean, on a small crab, you're going to crush those shells. So this works good for that as well. Yeah, then we can go ahead and talk my artificials. I use the Hogies, and they are these big dudes here. This is actually one I got bit off by a barracuda, so I just trimmed it to make it a little bit smaller. But they use these, I use the Hogie hooks, which have the little spring twist on. So you twist them on the spring, and then you have a very big solid hook. And these Hogies are very large. I use 2 colors. I always stock 2 colors, white and black. Very boring. They also come in pink. I've got some pink that Jose gave me, but white and black. White is pretty much from sun up through sunset, and I switch over to the black as soon as the sun gets down. Okay, once the sun goes away, but it still has some sort of light to it, then I go to the black. Okay, and then any nighttime fishing, I use the black. The reason why is contrast. You would think, oh, black in nighttime wouldn't be good, but what it is, you have to think it's a tarpon looking up into the sky, which is rarely pitch black, and seeing black contrast against that lighter background gives a little bit more contrast than a white does. And even when that just after sunset, where it's still fairly bright out there, the clouds in the sky will blend with white, where the black is definitely a lot darker and will show that contrast. Pink they use are very popular around here as well because it's just a sight thing. There's nothing natural that follows that, but it makes it stick out, and tarpon are hungry. They're going to feed on anything moving, and they'll be able to see this better than anything else. With these baits, what primarily you're targeting is mullet. I'm throwing is to mimic mullet, and they're top swimmers, and they're just waggle along the top of the surface. Tarpon are primarily up feeders. They've got their mouth that is pointed up, so they tend to slurp and catch fish and bait up above them, and that's what this mimics along the top there. Yeah, that's pretty much it, all except for my bait catching rig. I use the number 12 long shank, number 12 bait hooks, so it's easier to remove from the pinfish and the grunts in case they swallow it. Next is bait management, live bait management. I use 4 baits throughout the season, and I use them in stages depending on the season, water temps, what they're feeding on, and then the location that I'm, the type of water conditions that I'm fishing. So I've got blue crabs, mullet, pinfish, grunts. All right. In order for those, you got to catch them. I use a 5-foot net early in the mullet season, and these are just primarily just for catching mullet. I use a 5-foot early in the season when there's tons of mullet around. I can throw it farther, more accurate, and reload a lot quicker than I can the bigger net. The 7-foot I'll use alternately, just depending on what I'm feeling that day, or if I know where the baits are or how picky they're being. But definitely towards the end or middle of summer, towards the end of the tarpon season, when the water temps start really getting high, even the mullet start taking off and they become fewer and farther between. So I convert to the 7-foot net, so I'll spend all day just looking for the mullet. So when I do see them, I want to make sure I get them. So I'll throw that bigger net and ensure I get those fish there. Super, super important. 5-gallon bucket, okay? Save your money on all those expensive live wells with the anything electric, bubblers, all that stuff, pumps, okay? Salt water kills everything. It's a lot of extra weight. It's a lot of extra hassle. Don't need it. 5-gallon a 5-gallon bucket. Drill a nice little hole there, maybe a 3/8 to start with, 1/4 inch, okay? Get a nice plastic bucket, scoop bucket, okay? And you just fill it full of water, and it'll weep out this weep hole, and that'll recycle the water out. Then once that's drained down to the hole, you reach back, scoop, drop some water in there. Okay, bubblers keep oxygenated, but they're not very effective because what happens is that you get the buildup of all the waste, okay, in the water itself, and you're not circulating that. You're just basically how it would be if you peed and pooed in your bathtub and you just lived in that bathtub. Okay, how long are you going to survive? It's just nasty water. It just gets worse and worse and stagnant, and versus having a plug open and water just constantly circulating it. All right, it's that same thing with this. It's always fresh oxygenated water, and the waste is getting pumped out at the same time. Keeps your bait happy and perky and so forth. I generally on my kayak I run 2 buckets always. One being if I'm running combinations of bait. I don't like to put anything with the crabs, because if you put fish bait with crabs, it stresses them out and you'll end up killing them because they've got stuff bumping into them. They're on the bottom. They can't get away from them, and fish are just on the bottom as well running into them, and it just stresses them out, shocks them out, and it kills them. So if I do crabs, I like to keep them separately. I'll even use a small trolling style if I only just have a couple, but usually I've got a few decent large size crabs, so I can use the 5-gallon bucket. The other option is when I'll do pinfish and grunts. I'll have a bucket for that. And then when I'm doing mullet, I'll also, I could keep 5 medium-sized mullet in here fine, and then that's based on when I get to my spot, I'm putting 1 on the hook or 2 on the hook, And if I'm going to be long term, it'll hold 3 to 4 without a problem, just flushing that water. The other thing I have is very important to go with those is the lids. Okay, mullet, jump. Okay, if you just put a mullet in a bucket, it'll just jump out and it'll be gone, and you won't even know it, and you'll be very depressed of all that work you lost. Get the ones where you could pop open the smaller hatch and just reach your arm in there and your arm blocks it. Any little hole, they'll fly out of there. You have to make sure that it's put on there very snugly, because even with the lid closed, they'll jump. I've had them impact that hatch enough that it'll pop open and then they jump out. I also have a secondary cover, this one where I drilled a bunch of holes. For this one, what I do is, specifically for mullet, when I'm loaded up, especially if I'm going to be night fishing for tarpon, you have to be very specific on your bait management. Everything, well, a lot of things love mullet, especially the barracudas and the sharks. So you'll cycle through a lot of baits, wasting them to barracudas and the sharks before you get to those tarpons. So sometimes you need quite a few baits. If you have crabs, only thing that'll eat them when you have them on a bobber is a tarpon. That's it. Nothing else is going to mess with them. Pinfish and grunt, you can hold quite a bit. I could put a dozen solid sized grunts and pinfish in here. They just sit in one stationary position. They're not necessarily swimming around, so that's okay there. So I could get away with one bucket. But mullet, nighttime, I want to get about 8 to 10 of them. And to constantly be aerating them is just a hassle. So what I do is I bring this cover on, put it on, fill this one up with 5, 6, 7 of them, put the lid on, find a flats. I take out my stakeout anchor and put it through the handle and just submerge that in the water just off to the side of where I'm fishing. Then I'll have my other container that'll have 3 or 4 of them in it, and I'll just use that to feed my fishing. Once I run out of those, I just go back to the flats, pick this one up, either transfer it or just split them up or however. And then I've got capacity for 8 to 10 mullet. So that's very important as well. Yeah, it's all about the bait. Okay, take care of your bait and you're going to catch the tarpon. For pinfish and grunt, I just use that bait rod setup that I showed you already. For crabs, I catch my own. I'm not going to pay $3 a shot for crabs, so I catch my own, and I've just basically got this converted net. Bought a standard fun butterfly catching net from Kmart. Switched over the wide holes for it to this is a laundry basket mesh. The reason why it's so thin is because I also use it to catch live shrimp. But for crabs, I can just basically bait them up with some squid, dead fish, chicken on a string, get them close and scoop them up. And you'll see me doing this all tarpon season when I need crabs. Some other miscellaneous stuff. Bobbers, floats, very important, okay? Using live baits quite often. Again, tarpon are an up feeder, okay? They like to sit low, look up, and then come up and gulp food up on top. So suspending your baits is very important. So I'll use multiple styles of bobbers. This one is a tie-on, tie it to your main line, and then tie the leader to the bottom so it's always permanently attached. I've got this kind where it could be a slip bobber, or that you could put the line in and use this to pinch the line and that holds it. I've got balloons you can use the same way. And then I actually have the old school bluegill bobbers that I like to use. Quick and easy, just attach it to the line. They suspend the bait fine, especially with crabs. I don't have to deal with these. These can be kind of expensive, a couple bucks. These are just cheap, quick and easy. And like I said, the balloons will work as well. One other thing, not related to the fishing equipment, but to your mode of transport, whether it be your kayak or boat, is the quick release anchor system. Okay, hugely important, almost a mandatory. Unless you're going to get a big old huge reel, really heavy duty rod with a ton of line capacity that you're going to let rip off for a mile. Okay, you're going to want to release your boat or kayak from the anchor and follow that fish. It's better for you, it's better for your equipment, and it's better for the tarpon. All right. So when I mean quick release, I mean one finger and you're free from whatever. Okay. So not anything that requires undoing a knot, nothing that requires two hands to kind of reel it in or undo, okay? One finger, click, and then you're gone, all right? No different on a boat. When the flats boats I take out, I'll ask them, do they have some sort of throwaway flotation device for their anchor line? If they don't have it, I've got spare ones of these little Outwoods or whatever I find in the mangroves, and then I tie a rope to it, and then I can attach that to someone's existing anchor line. So when it comes down to it, same deal. They hook up, I run to the front, throw off the anchor line with the float, and we're free and we're running after that fish. Majority of the time, it's chasing the fish down here. We hardly ever sit on anchor. You're just looking for heartbreak if you do. So very important, almost a mandatory. So that's all my tarpon specific stuff, all very basic, nothing super special. This will be my third tarpon season filming on YouTube. So if you go back to my prior 2 years tarpon videos, and there is a tarpon playlist with, I don't know, probably 100 videos on it, but tons of tips, same information I give here. Future videos, I'll go into a lot more detail about how to catch them, what I'm looking for, the rigging, how to fight them, how to land them, where to find them, okay? And more details in the upcoming videos. But all that stuff is in my older videos as well, because it really hasn't changed. I catch a ton of tarpon, I do the same things. I mix it up to make it a little bit more interesting. But yeah, if you want to know ahead of time for this tarpon season rather than waiting for me to catch tarpon and explain what I'm doing, check out my tarpon playlist on my main page, and it's got everything. Where to go, what baits, how to catch the baits, how to rig the baits, how to rig your lines, how to where to fish, how to present the baits, how to do the hook set, how to do the fights. I mean, detailed step-by-step videos on the water commentaries as I'm fighting it. So very helpful, I think, if you haven't played the game down here. Yeah, it's tarpon time. Time to go fishing if it wasn't blowing 30 knots out there. So anyways, hopefully that's interesting, helpful. But thanks for watching, and I will see you next video. Bye.